Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the Mission Impossible franchise once again, more specifically the main reason we all go to see these movies in the first place, the insane action set pieces. Of course there are more to these movies than just the action. We love the characters, we love the complex yet easy to follow interconnected plot lines, and the world-ending stakes which make all of the action sequences just that much more entertaining and intense. Before I continue on, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. Also feel free to check out my letterbox where I am very active and you can also read reviews and rankings that I post over there. The Mission Impossible franchise has some of the most iconic stunts, suspense building, and awe-inspiring action set pieces ever put to the big screen. These movies have such a great variety of unique set pieces that it's very hard to narrow down to just a top 10 list. Before I get into the top 10 list of my favorite set pieces in Mission Impossible, I have to define what a Mission Impossible set piece is for the sake of this video. For this list, I'm going to define a Mission Impossible set piece as any chase scene, any extended suspense sequence, any somewhat extended fight scene lasting more than, say, a minute or so, just to make the criteria a bit more specific, and any extended sequence involving intense peril for the characters. Yes, it's still kind of a vague definition, but it will work for what I'm talking about today. Now on to the honorable mentions, and it was really hard to narrow down just to 10 entries, so I have 7 honorable mentions. Should I have made this a top 20 video? Probably, but I didn't. The CIA Black Vault heist from the original Mission film is probably the single most iconic sequence in the entire franchise, and is easily the highlight of the original movie. Like every scene I'm going to be talking about here, I love this sequence. It's white-knuckled, it's exciting, and it leaves you at the edge of your seat. I just can't place it on the list because of how awesome the rest of these set pieces are. My next honorable mention is the Venice foot chase and the preceding fights from Dead Reckoning. This sequence presents some of the most intense stuff from Dead Reckoning, and it is one of the most emotionally charged action sequences in the franchise. Lauren Balfe goes absolutely off with the music of this entire sequence, and I love the extended shot of Ethan running with all of the candles lit. The alley fight is extremely unique, it's visceral, and it's very claustrophobic. And it all ends with Ethan racing to the bridge where Gabriel will inevitably kill Ilsa, making it easily one of the most heartbreaking set pieces in the entire franchise. The opening scene from Rogue Nation, where Ethan Hunt hangs onto the side of a giant Airbus, is one of the absolute most insane stunts that Tom Cruise has ever done. I can't reasonably place it on this list because it is relatively short, and the stakes are fairly minimal because the story hasn't really kicked off yet, but it is an incredible way to open an amazing movie. The big chase scene from Ghost Protocol, where Ethan runs after Wistrom, quote unquote, is one of the most memorable action sequences in a film full of memorable set pieces. Just the shot of Ethan full on sprinting as the sandstorm approaches from behind is enough to make it an honorable mention. A sequence I haven't heard talked about enough is the dual fight scene from The Final Reckoning, where the team fends off against the Russians at Donlow's house, and Ethan fends off an entity fanatic on the USS Ohio. And this is really the scene that kicks the film into high gear for the rest of the runtime. I feel like this is a super underappreciated hand-to-hand combat scene and is one of the best sequences of The Final Reckoning, especially with a standout piece of the score that builds brilliantly with the two fights interspliced. The big Rome car chase from Dead Reckoning is just a pure fun scene. It's long, it's exciting, and it builds Ethan and Grace's chemistry wonderfully. The various amount of vehicles used add a great deal of variety. Ethan steals a police bike to chase after Grace. Grace crashes. Ethan drives the normal gas car and then an electric car. Pom Clementieff's Paris chases after them in an armored vehicle while Briggs closes in on Ethan as well. And then Ethan and Grace being handcuffed together also puts Ethan in a much more vulnerable position than he's used to, where he isn't in total control. It makes it a super fun and unique car chase within the franchise. And my last honorable mention is probably the best hand-to-hand combat sequence in the entire series, and it's the bathroom fight from Fallout. I don't have too much to say about this one other than the Henry Cavill reloading his fists moment being absolutely iconic, and the scene having pretty much practically perfect choreography to it. This is also a scene that really emphasizes Ethan's vulnerability as a character. What really separates Ethan Hunt from other major action heroes, say like characters played by The Rock or Vin Diesel, is that Tom Cruise lets himself get his ass kicked, which makes for a super fun watch. It has taken entirely too long to get to my actual top 10, but whatever, here is the actual list now. In 10th place is one of the best pieces of pure suspense filmmaking that I have ever seen in a movie, and that is the Vienna opera scene from Rogue Nation. This is a very extended suspense piece that continuously builds with moving pieces and with its music. Speaking of the music, this scene expertly uses the music from the Turandot, I hope that's how you pronounce it, opera, to keep building the tension. There is also a lot at stake during this opera scene. Ethan is desperately searching for Solomon Lane, whom he knows is at this opera, so he brings Benji to Vienna, unknowingly, to assist with the technical side of the search. Meanwhile, Ilsa Faust arrives to assassinate the Prime Minister of Vienna to get back in the good graces of the Syndicate after letting Hunt escape earlier in the film. But of course, Solomon Lane being Solomon Lane, he has set up insurance with two different assassins in case Faust fails. One of these assassins faces off with Ethan atop the stage's rafters. This fight has a bit of a more subdued choreography to it, and it lets the incredible music build in a stunning fashion. It then all leads to where Ethan must make a choice to somehow save the Prime Minister before Ilsa has the chance to take her shot at a precise moment in the music, while another assassin sets up to take out Ilsa in case she fails. Ethan grazes the Prime Minister's shoulder to protect him from more serious harm, but of course this was all in vain because Solomon Lane had set up more than enough insurance to make sure the Prime Minister's death was certain. This is such a fun and tense sequence. As I've stated before, the music builds expertly and keeps you on the edge of your seat. It is a standout suspense scene in a film known for its masterful suspense. My number 9 pick is the London foot chase from Fallout. To me, this is easily the best foot chase in the franchise, easily topping the Shanghai scene from 3, the Sandstorm scene from Ghost Protocol, and the Venice scene from Dead Reckoning. Part of my reasoning is that Lauren Balfe's score in this scene is absurdly awesome and intense. And generally, seeing Ethan Hunt do basically a full tilt sprint to catch up to Henry Cavill is awesomely entertaining as well. There are so many amazing shots and moments that make this chase viscerally intense with all that's at stake. The whole purpose of keeping Solomon Lane hostage and keeping August Walker, aka John Lark, nearby was to have leverage to exchange for the plutonium cores from the Apostles. Well, since Lane escaped, Hunt needs to catch up to Walker before he also escapes to find where the cores are and keep them out of the enemy's hands. There's also a fun bit of humor in this sequence where Benji's monitor is stuck in certain positions that confuse Hunt during the chase. Of course, this is also the scene where Tom Cruise broke his ankle trying to get the perfect shot, and well, it came out great. This marks the end of the second act, where Ethan fails to capture Walker as both Walker and Lane escape via helicopter. A pattern that you will notice in this list is that I really love the set pieces that are a combination of being visceral with their intensity and where the sequence is matched with a great piece of music, like this one. My number 8 set piece from the Mission Impossible franchise is the Halo jump from Fallout. Another pattern that you will see in this video is that quite a few set pieces from Fallout appear. One might question why this isn't higher because the stunt work is absurdly insane. Well, really my only reasoning that it's not higher is that it is so early in the film, it's about 20 minutes or so into Fallout, so the stakes aren't quite as high as the rest of the movie. That said, this Halo jump scene is utterly jaw-dropping. This is an incredible feat of filmmaking on pretty much all fronts. The stunt work is crazy, Tom Cruise is actually jumping from 25,000 feet in the sky and maneuvering his way to the other stunt person playing Walker. Not only is that impressive, but also the cameraman is doing the fall too. It's also a great showcase in editing, because the entire sequence is stitched together with 3 different takes with a seamless feel to make it look like one seamless, extended, one-long take. The visual effects are also fantastic. The storm feels seamless, and the visual edit of Paris being beneath them rather than the desert where they shot it is practically flawless. The Halo jump is an absurdly impressive piece of filmmaking that combines so many important pieces of an action set piece to make it feel as real as possible. My number 7 pick is pretty much just a big cheat because I'm technically combining 3 sequences into one, but I am going to state that the water vault break-in, followed by the 2 motor vehicle chases from Rogue Nation, is my 7th favorite set piece in the franchise. First, with the water vault. The basic premise of this heist is classic Mission Impossible. In order for Ethan, Benji, and Ilsa to get access to the virtual red box, they need to input a personal profile of Benji to get past the motion and gate analyzer so he can download the data. One problem though, the storage is in an underwater Taurus vault. Another problem, if any metal goes into the Taurus, a security alarm will go off. So Ethan cannot bring in oxygen tanks. Ethan needs to hold his breath for 3 minutes in order to get into the Taurus and input Benji's profile. Naturally, this goes wrong and takes Ethan longer than it should have. He successfully inputs the data, but drowns in the process. Ilsa comes to the rescue and opens the inner hatch, allowing them to escape and allows her and Benji to resuscitate Ethan. This leads into a double chase scene as Ilsa double crosses Ethan and Benji, steals the digital ledger, and knocks down all of the Syndicate agents as she flees from everyone. Benji and Ethan give chase, starting with one of the funniest moments of the entire franchise.
Whoa. Are you okay to drive? I mean, a minute ago you were dead. What are you talking about?
This car chase is sick. There is a minimal musical score, it has impeccable sound design, and excellent stunt driving. This part of the chase ends in a huge crash that quite frankly probably should have killed Ethan and Benji.
Things got a little out of hand.
Ah! Look out!
But then this leads into another chase where Ethan rides a motorcycle at seemingly 100 miles an hour without a helmet or any safety gear. In contrast to the minimal score of the car chase portion of this set piece, the motorcycle chase has music blaring and amping up the tension. This is one of the many awesome vehicular chases in the franchise. As far as individual car sequences, this one is probably my favorite. I can't say the same about the motorcycle scene because there may or may not be another kind of scene like that coming up next, but this sequence of events, from the water vault to when Ethan crashes the bike, is my favorite chunk of Rogue Nation. My number 6 pick for the best set piece in the franchise is what I also think is the best motor vehicle chase of the series. The escape through Paris scene from Fallout is an exhilarating action set piece and a standout moment in the non-stop masterpiece that is Mission Impossible Fallout. The basic setup of this scene is that the White Widow's crew are setting up for extracting Solomon Lane from the authorities, but Ethan needs to extract Lane in a different way. Instead of following the setup plan, he crashes the truck into the armored vehicle so Benji can extract Lane without any casualties. Ethan and Walker race to where they have stashed 2 bikes so they can escape, but Ethan's bike doesn't start fast enough, so he has been spotted by the police and now has a clear description for him for the authorities to follow, and he now requires Benji and Luther to go to the backup rendezvous. The way this scene is shot always makes me feel like I'm there. I have no idea how they filmed this, even after watching behind the scenes features. Tom Cruise, like usual, is driving incredibly fast amongst traffic, bobbing in between cars, and of course, without a helmet. It also helps that Lauren Balfe's score in this sequence really emphasizes the intensity and the speed of the moment. Really, the entirety of Fallout's musical score enhances everything about the movie, and this is the 3rd set piece from Fallout that is on this list. It really goes to show how packed with just straight up awesomeness that movie is. In 5th place is, aside from the Black Vault break-in from the first movie, arguably the most iconic sequence in the franchise, and that is when Ethan Hunt climbs the side of the Burj Khalifa in Ghost Protocol. In order for the team to gain access to the hotel's cameras and functionalities, Ethan needs to break into the server room and input Benji's code. Unfortunately, every entrance from the inside is too difficult to get into within the minimal time that the team has to set up for the nuclear code exchange. So naturally, Ethan climbs up to the floor and breaks into the server room from the outside of the tallest building in the world. This is really the sequence that sets the tone of the rest of the franchise. It made Tom Cruise and company really think about what kind of crazy stunts they could film for these movies, and well, the rest is history. While Cruise was connected to safety cables to ensure safety as much as possible, he really is on the outside of that building, climbing it, running across the windows, and making jumps. Everything about this scene is meant to build anxiety. The very first shot of the camera following Ethan out the window to show how high up he is always manages to freak me out. I'm terrified of heights, so I would never even imagine thinking about doing something like this. Like everything else in Ghost Protocol, the gadgets start failing, so then Ethan needs to start climbing with only one sticky glove, and as he reaches the server room, the glass cutter sparks and causes him to fall. The second glove eventually stops working, and he needs to improvise a way back down, which also leads to another one of the funniest moments in the series.
Your line's not long enough! No shit!
This sequence is iconic for a reason. The only complaint I have is that Paramount seemingly refuses to give the Burj Khalifa climb the proper IMAX expanded aspect ratios on the home releases. My number 4 favorite set piece in the franchise is one of the newest. The Sevastopol infiltration set piece from The Final Reckoning is jaw-dropping and breathtaking. It's so good that even the negative Nancys on The Final Reckoning acknowledge how truly epic the main set pieces of this movie are, this one being one of the standouts. After a fairly long and complicated setup to find the location of the Sevastopol, Ethan must find the sonar sphere within the submarine to access the Podkova, which now houses the mutated source code, now known as the Entity. That's pretty much the entire setup of this sequence. It has such a simple premise for such a central action sequence, but this scene is viscerally intense and in a very different way from anything else that the Mission Impossible franchise has done. It is also a very extended sequence. I believe that it is over 20 minutes of screen time from when Ethan leaves the USS Ohio to when he gets back to the surface. It is also a sequence that gives a great piece of juxtaposition within the film. A lot of the first 90 minutes is very dialogue heavy and has a lot of exposition to get us to where the story needs to go. So when an extremely extended set piece like this, with practically no dialogue and only atmospheric score happens, it makes it so much more memorable within the movie. And despite the simple premise, this sequence also manages to pack in a ton of variety. Each room within the submarine presents a different challenge for Ethan Hunt to overcome. And there's another issue that starts occurring. Ethan's actions within the submarine disturb the stillness and cause the sub to start moving. So not only does Ethan have a limited amount of time to find the Podkova within the submarine, but now he also has to find it before the sub falls off from the ocean drop-off. This also makes the use of the inner sets of the submarine so much fun. It starts rotating and filling with water. The torpedoes within the sub start moving and blocking pathways, which force Ethan to follow more difficult paths. And when I said that this scene was breathtaking, I meant it in a pretty literal sense as well. All 3 times I have seen this movie in IMAX, I have to remind myself that I am not actually underwater with Ethan, and that I can, in fact, breathe. Speaking of IMAX, this has one of the coolest transitions from scope aspect ratio to the expanded IMAX ratio. When Ethan rotates a hatch, the ratio expands with it. This scene alone makes the experience of Final Reckoning worth it in IMAX, and it also helps that the rest of the movie is pretty freaking awesome as well. My third favorite set piece is the Orient Express finale from Dead Reckoning. I am mainly going to talk about the last 15 to 20 minutes of this sequence where the actual action starts taking place, but the last 45 minutes of this movie all revolve around this train, and it's all great. It builds suspense in a great way with the key trade scene and with the explanation Denlinger gives about the origins of the entity, but I mainly want to talk about everything from the cliff jump onwards. The main stunt that this movie built its marketing around was the cliff jump, which kicks off the main action surrounding this train. Admittedly, the marketing definitely over advertised this cliff jump. By the time the film finally came out, we pretty much had already seen everything about this stunt. The IMAX preview of Avatar 2 came with a behind the scenes look at the stunt and showed just about everything months in advance. And the jump is fairly short. It's awesome, but I can see some people having been underwhelmed by how much it was built up by the marketing and having a very small presence in the movie. It is certainly, though, one of the craziest individual stunts that Tom Cruise has ever done. Ethan then crashes into the train and saves Grace. He then goes after Gabriel, who now is in possession of the cruciform key, while Grace is tasked by Ethan to slow down the train. Ethan and Gabriel fight on top of the train in an awesome fight, accompanied by one of my favorite pieces of Lauren Balfe's score. There is a lot at stake here as well. If Gabriel manages to escape with the key, the world is at risk, alongside Ethan also having his desire for revenge after Gabriel killed Ilsa. The train eventually goes into a tunnel, and it causes a reminiscent scene to the original movie where Ethan fights Phelps atop the train in a tunnel. I think this was obviously much better because that scene from the original is not in this list. Ethan manages to overpower Gabriel, but the two are interrupted by Briggs and Dega. Gabriel jumps off onto a prearranged escape vehicle, but Ethan managed to steal the key using his sleight of hand, paying off earlier moments from the movie. Unfortunately, Gabriel had already sabotaged the engine, so Grace is not able to stop the train, and it is speeding toward a bridge that is rigged with explosives. Ethan and Grace proceed to decouple the train's engine and need to climb their way to safety as momentum and gravity keeps making the train move forward over the cliff. This part of the train scene is easily my favorite part. It just keeps escalating, or should I say de-escalating in a quite literal fashion. They need to make their way through the kitchen with grease falling all over the floor and the stovetops brimming with fire. The next car is filled with dining tables and chairs and gravity becomes an enemy to them. A piano somehow becomes super threatening as well. It is an exhilarating finale to an exhilarating movie. It manages to make the film feel incredibly satisfying as a singular experience, despite being the end of a part 1 to a larger story. This will then lead into my number 2 pick, which is the dual plane finale of The Final Reckoning. This set piece is absurdly astonishing. I think from a stunt perspective, this is the magnum opus of the franchise, and it has some of the most straight up insane filmmaking on display ever. For me, it obviously doesn't top my number 1 pick, but it is certainly up there in the conversation of the greatest sequence in the Mission Impossible series. It is insane. The setup for this one is a tad bit complex. Initially, the team's plan was to just give the Podkova to Gabriel so he could upload Luther's poison pill to the entity's network, thus tricking the entity into the Doomsday Vault where they can capture it, averting nuclear crisis. It's a simple plan that tricks both Gabriel and the entity into winning, while they are setting up the stuff in the Doomsday Vault to capture it. Obviously, this is all upended when Kittredge arrives and unintentionally sets off Gabriel's nuclear device timer, which is insurance for Gabriel for if the team doesn't give him the Podkova, and thus ensures that the entity has nowhere to safely hide in cyberspace, so it can't launch the world's nuclear weapons, and then it allows Gabriel to take control. This gives us 4 different aspects to the finale, which are all intercut, and all of them increase the tension. One is with the president, where she is trying to figure out the best course of action as the doomsday timer runs out and the entity prepares the world's nuclear weapons. One is with Grace, Paris, and Benji, where Grace must set up the tech to capture the entity, while Paris must do a makeshift operation on Benji to save his life. One is with Donlo, his wife, and Dega trying to disarm the atomic weapon. And the obvious big one is Ethan chasing after and escaping Gabriel so they can use the upload device and capture the entity. With the nuke seemingly to go off certainly in the bunker, Gabriel has a seemingly perfect plan. A. The nuke goes off, giving the entity nowhere to hide, thus not launching the bombs. B. Ethan catches up to him, and the Podkova comes into Gabriel's hands. Or C. Both happen. Obviously, Gabriel gaining control of the entity would be a bad thing, so now the team's original plan is completely moot, and Ethan has to catch up to Gabriel, who has taken off in a yellow biplane. Ethan manages to hang on to the separate red plane. In hindsight, McQuarrie probably could have come up with a simpler setup, because this is a little bit needlessly complicated, but it works, so I'm not going to complain about it, because the action is just so genuinely heart-stopping and bonkers that I can't come up with a reasonable complaint. You can count on multiple hands how many times I jumped and flinched at certain moments on opening night of this movie. It is similar to Fallout's conclusion, where Ethan must get from one aerial vehicle to another, but man, the way this was done is just so perfect. The stunt work is mind-blowing and really gets the blood pumping. Tom Cruise really hanging off of these planes somehow makes my stomach turn with anxiety because of how real it is. At any moment, the character could easily fall and fail. And of course, Ethan manages to get from one plane to another, and I have genuinely no idea how that bit was filmed. It just keeps racking up the insanity and tension on all fronts of this finale from every character in every location. The stakes could not be higher, the stunts could not be more insane, and the sequence itself could not be more white-knuckled. This is why we love movies. If this is truly the last Mission Impossible movie, it ended on an all-timer of an action sequence. But of course, that leaves us with my absolute favorite set piece from the Mission Impossible movies, and it couldn't be anything but the helicopter chase from Fallout. Not only do I think this remains the best sequence from the franchise, but I also hold it as my all-time favorite action sequence from any movie, period. No matter how many times I have seen Fallout, which to be frank is a lot at this point, I am always left breathless by this finale. Thankfully, the setup is significantly less complicated than the last one to explain. Lane and Walker have two nuclear bombs that will explode near a glacier in Kashmir, which will irradiate the largest natural irrigation system in the world, thus starving 1/3 of the world's population. In order for the team to defuse the bombs, they need to let the detonator start, remove the arming key from the detonator, and cut the last wire of both bombs at the same time. Unfortunately for the team, the countdown starts before they have discovered both bombs, and Walker is getting away with the detonator in a helicopter. Ethan climbs from the payload rope onto the opposite helicopter, manages to take the command of this helicopter, and ensues the chase where Walker brings out a big machine gun and opens fire. This chase is insanely intense. It also helps that everything going on with Ilsa and Benji is equally riveting, where they must take on Lane so they can defuse the second bomb, while Luther disarms the first one. Lorne Balfe's ultra-intense music throughout the last 25 minutes of Fallout is, in my opinion, his magnum opus of the franchise. It is just such good music, and it is so fitting for what's going on screen. Ethan manages to crash his helicopter, of which Tom Cruise is of course flying himself, because apparently that man can do literally everything except leave a cult for some reason, into Walker's helicopter, causing both of them to crash. They end up in a ridge where they both tumble onto a cliff. Hunt and Walker are exhausted, but they continue to fight for the detonator in a brutal and visceral fight. They both fall over the cliff and use the helicopter cable to climb back up, but Ethan realizes that the cable is losing its tension with the crumbling rock and pulls it to where the cable hook kills Walker. But even then, it's still not over. Ethan still has to climb back up to remove the detonator key, while Benji, Luther, and Ilsa anxiously wait for the countdown to get to 1 so they can cut the wires at the last second. Thankfully, it all works out and you are left with a huge sense of relief after 25 minutes of non-stop intensity. This sequence is truly masterful in every conceivable way. The cinematography is gorgeous, the stakes are at an all-time high, at least for when Fallout came out. The tension of the interconnected locations, the chase, and the fights are visceral and white-knuckled. This finale is one of the main reasons why Fallout is my all-time favorite action movie. Of course, the rest of the movie is pretty much perfection, but this sequence to me stands out as possibly the best action sequence ever filmed. And that will do it for my top 10 favorite Mission Impossible set pieces. God, I love these movies. If The Final Reckoning truly is the last one in the series, we are going to be missing out on some truly stunning action moving forward. This was a lot of fun to put together. Let me know what your favorite Mission Impossible scenes are in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. It's a great help. Also, feel free to check out my Letterboxd. Thank you all for watching, and this was probably way too long of a video for what it is. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.